The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a house fire. "Dad, I don't think you should come for Christmas this year." I stood there in my driveway, cell phone pressed against my ear, watching the December wind strip the last brown leaves from the oak tree I'd planted when Danny was 6, 20 years ago, back when he still called me his hero. "What do you mean, don't come?" There was a pause. In that pause, I heard everything I needed to know. The hesitation, the rehearsed quality of what came next. "It's just, Melissa's family is hosting this year, and it's going to be kind of formal, and we thought it might be better if we kept it small. Just immediate family." "I am immediate family," I wanted to say. "I'm your father." Instead, I said nothing. The silence stretched out like a country road at midnight. "Dad, you there? It's not personal, okay? It's just, this year is complicated." Complicated. That's what my son had become. Complicated. 3 years ago, he'd married Melissa Hartwell, whose family owned half the commercial real estate in our county, and probably a good chunk of the next one over. Since then, he'd gotten complicated. "Sure," I said. "No problem." "Really? You're not mad?" Was I mad? I was standing in the driveway of the house where I'd raised him alone after his mother died, the house where I'd sat up with him through fevers and nightmares, where I'd taught him to throw a baseball, change a tire, treat people with dignity, and he was uninviting me to Christmas because I wasn't formal enough for his wife's family. "No," I lied. "I'm not mad." "Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd understand. We'll do something, just you and me, maybe in January." January, the month where good intentions go to die. "Sure thing, Danny." It's Daniel now, actually. Melissa thinks Danny sounds kind of... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I hung up without saying goodbye. The phone felt heavy in my hand, like it was made of something denser than plastic and glass. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the garage where I'd spent the last 23 years building and rebuilding motorcycles. The sign above the door said Donovan's Garage in faded letters I kept meaning to repaint. Jack Donovan. That's me. 47 years old, hands permanently stained with engine grease, back that aches when it rains, not good enough for Christmas dinner at the Hartwell estate. I walked inside. My wife Linda was in the kitchen, pulling a meatloaf from the oven. She took one look at my face and set the pan down. "What happened?" "Danny called." "And?" "We're not invited to Christmas." She went very still. Linda's not the type to scream or throw things. She gets quiet when she's angry. Dangerously quiet. "What did you say?" "I said it was fine." "Jack, what was I supposed to do? Beg him to let us come?" She pulled off her oven mitts and tossed them on the counter. "You were supposed to tell him that's unacceptable. That he doesn't get to just erase his own father because his wife's family looks down on people who work with their hands." That's exactly what it was, of course. I'd known it the moment Daniel, started talking. The Hartwells thought I was beneath them. A mechanic, blue collar, someone who showed up to the wedding with grease still under his fingernails, despite scrubbing for an hour. Melissa had made a comment about it at the reception. Loud enough for me to hear, quiet enough to pretend she didn't mean for me to. I don't know how Danny turned out so refined with that background. That background. Meaning me. "I'm going to the garage," I said. Linda grabbed my arm. "Don't let them do this to you." They already did it. I went out to the garage and turned on the space heater. The cold December air made the metal tools feel like ice. I'd been working on a 1972 Triumph Bonneville for the past 6 months. Rebuilding it from the frame up. It was almost done. Beautiful machine. Chrome that caught the light like water. I sat down on my work stool and stared at it. 26 years. That's how long I'd been Danny's father. I'd changed his diapers, walked him to his first day of school, taught him to drive in this very driveway, paid for his college because I didn't want him to have debt hanging over his head like I did. And now I wasn't invited to Christmas because I wasn't formal enough. I picked up a wrench and threw it across the garage. It hit the far wall with a clang that echoed in the cold space. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not much. Just enough to know that my son had broken something in me that wouldn't be easily fixed. I stayed out there until after midnight. Linda brought me coffee around 11. Didn't say anything, just squeezed my shoulder and left. She knows when I need to be alone. When I finally went inside, I found her asleep on the couch, laptop open beside her. I glanced at the screen and saw she'd been looking at flights to Florida. Her sister lived down there. I guess she was thinking we could spend Christmas somewhere else. I closed the laptop gently and covered her with a blanket. Then I went to bed and didn't sleep. The next morning was Saturday. I got up early, made coffee, tried to act normal. Linda came into the kitchen around 8, looking like she'd slept as badly as I had. "I've been thinking," she said. "Yeah? We should go somewhere, make our own Christmas, show them we don't need their formal dinner." It was a good idea, a kind idea, but it felt wrong, like running away. "Maybe," I said. She poured herself coffee and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. The same table where Danny had done his homework, where we'd played cards on rainy afternoons, where I'd explained to him that his mother wasn't coming back from the hospital. "You need to talk to him," Linda said. "Really talk to him. Make him understand what he's doing." "He knows what he's doing." "I don't think he does. I think Melissa's in his ear, and he's just going along with it because he wants to make her happy." Maybe that was true. Maybe my son was just weak, not cruel. But I wasn't sure that made it better. "I'll think about it," I said. But I didn't think about it. I tried not to think about it at all. I spent that day in the garage, finishing work on the Triumph. By evening it was done. I turned the key and the engine roared to life, smooth and powerful. Perfect. I sat there, listening to it idle, feeling the vibration through the frame, and thought about just getting on it and riding away. Just going. Pick a direction and follow it until I ran out of gas or gave a damn, whichever came first. But I didn't. I turned off the engine and went inside. Sunday was worse. The silence from Daniel, was like a physical presence. No call, no text, nothing. Like he'd said what he needed to say, and now I was just supposed to accept it and move on. Linda was on the phone most of the day, talking to her sister in Florida, making plans. I heard her say, "I know, I can't believe it either," about 6 times. Around 4 in the afternoon, I decided to take a drive. Needed to clear my head. Linda asked if I wanted company, but I said no. I needed to be alone with this. I got in my truck, a 1998 Ford F-150 that had 300,000 miles on it and ran like a dream, and started driving. I didn't have a destination in mind, just drove. Through town, past the high school where Danny had played baseball, past the lot where I'd taught him to parallel park, past all the little monuments to a relationship that apparently didn't matter anymore. Then, almost without meaning to, I found myself driving toward Millbrook Heights. That's where the Hartwells lived, where Danny and Melissa had their house. I told myself I wasn't going to stop, just driving through. But when I got to their street, a cul-de-sac full of houses that looked like they belonged in a magazine, I slowed down. Their house was the second from the end. Big colonial with white columns, professionally landscaped, Christmas decorations that probably cost more than I made in a month. 3 cars in the driveway, Danny's Audi, Melissa's Mercedes, and a Lexus SUV I didn't recognize. Told myself I'd just sit here for a minute, collect my thoughts, then leave. But I didn't leave. I sat there and watched the house, watched the warm light in the windows, watched the shadows of people moving inside. Then the front door opened, and Melissa came out with another woman. Blonde, probably her age, dressed like she was going to lunch at the country club. They were laughing about something. I rolled down my window a crack. Could just barely hear them. "Can't believe you actually uninvited him," the blonde woman was saying. Melissa laughed. I know, but Stephen said it would be easier this way. My parents were going to be so uncomfortable. Stephen. That's what she called him, not Danny, not even Daniel. Stephen, his middle name, the one his mother picked. Does he feel bad about it? The blonde asked. Melissa shrugged. A little, but he knows it's for the best. I mean, his father's sweet and everything. But he's just so rough around the edges. Last time he came over, he showed up in coveralls. Coveralls, like he'd just rolled out from under a car. I had just rolled out from under a car. I'd been working. Plus, Melissa continued, he borrowed money from Stephen years ago and never paid it back. At least that's what I told my parents. The blonde gasped. He didn't really, did he? No, but they don't know that. It just makes the whole thing easier to explain. She'd lied. She'd lied to her parents about me to justify cutting me out. They walked to the Mercedes, still talking, but I couldn't hear any more. I sat there until they drove away. Then I sat there longer. Around 6, Danny came out. He got in his Audi and backed out of the driveway. I waited until he was out of sight, then started my truck and drove home. Linda was in the kitchen when I got back. Where were you? Driving. She studied my face. Jack, what did you do? Nothing. I walked past her toward the garage. I didn't do anything. Jack, I'm going to work on something. I'll be in for dinner. I went out to the garage and shut the door. Stood there in the cold with my hands shaking. My son had chosen her over me, had let her lie about me, had let her mock me to her friends. I sat down on my work stool and stared at the triumph. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg. Wasn't going to call him and plead my case or try to make him understand. That ship had sailed, but I wasn't going to just accept it either. I pulled out my phone and blocked Danny's number, then Melissa's. Then I sat there in the cold garage and waited for something to change inside me. It did. The hurt was still there, the betrayal. But underneath it, something else was growing, something cold and patient. I'd built my whole life around being a good father, around making sure my son had everything he needed. And this is what it got me. Fine. I stood up and went inside. Linda was setting the table. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, and I almost meant it. We ate dinner, watched TV, went to bed. Normal Sunday evening. Except nothing was normal anymore. I woke up Monday morning with 25 missed calls. While you're here, hit the hype button, don't forget to subscribe and support this channel with a like. And tell us below. Have you ever faced something like this? The phone was vibrating itself across the nightstand like a living thing trying to escape. I picked it up and stared at the screen. 25 missed calls, 15 voicemails, 30-something text messages, all from numbers I'd blocked yesterday. Apparently blocking someone doesn't stop the call log from recording their attempts. Danny, Melissa, numbers I didn't recognize but had the same area code, all from between 3 and 6 in the morning. I sat up in bed. Linda was still asleep beside me. The clock said 6:47 a.m. I scrolled through the call log. 3 calls from Danny at 3:15 a.m., 5 calls from Melissa between 3:30 and 4 a.m., more calls from unknown numbers, then another burst from Danny around 5:30. Something had happened. My first instinct was to call back. 26 years of being a father doesn't just switch off. When your kid calls you 15 times in the middle of the night, you answer. But I didn't. I got out of bed, went to the kitchen, made coffee, stood at the window watching the sun come up over the neighborhood. The phone kept buzzing in my pocket like an angry wasp. Linda came in around 7:30. Is your phone broken? She asked. It's been going off since 5. It's Danny. She stopped mid-reach for the coffee pot. What happened? Don't know. Haven't listened. Jack. I blocked him yesterday. After I went for that drive. She stared at me. What are you talking about? What drive? So I told her. About driving to their neighborhood. about what I'd heard Melissa say, about the lies she'd told her parents. Linda's face went through several expressions: shock, anger, then something harder. She told them you borrowed money and didn't pay it back. That's what she said. That lying little... Linda stopped herself, took a breath. And Danny knows about this? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. She grabbed my phone off the counter. You need to call him back. No. Jack, he called you 25 times. Something's wrong. Then he can come here and tell me to my face. I'm done with phone calls. We stood there looking at each other. Linda's the kind of person who fixes things, who smooths over conflicts, who makes peace. But something in my face must have told her this wasn't fixable. Not with a phone call. Not with peace. Okay, she said finally. Okay. The phone rang again. Another unknown number. I turned it off completely and shoved it in a drawer. I'm going to work, I said. I run my garage out of our property, but I also do contract work for a couple of dealerships in town. Mostly resto jobs they don't have time for. I had a 1967 Mustang waiting for me at Patterson's Ford, needed the transmission rebuilt. I drove there in silence. No radio, just the sound of the truck engine and my own thoughts. Patterson's is on the east side of town, big lot full of new cars gleaming in the morning sun. I pulled around back to the service bay and went in through the rear door. Tim Patterson was in his office, looked up when I walked in. Jack, got a minute? Sure. I followed him into the office. He closed the door. I got a weird call this morning, he said, around 5, from some woman asking about you. My stomach tightened. What woman? Didn't give her name, but she was asking if you worked here, how long I'd known you, if you were reliable. Seemed real urgent about it. What did you tell her? Told her you were the best mechanic I'd ever worked with and to lose my number. He paused. Everything okay? Family stuff. Nothing to worry about. But he looked worried anyway. Tim's known me for 15 years, knows when I'm lying. Your kid? He asked. I nodded. Want to talk about it? Not really. Fair enough. Mustang's in Bay 3 whenever you're ready. I spent the next 4 hours elbow deep in that Mustang, letting the work clear my head. Transmissions are simple, logical. You take them apart, find what's broken, fix it, put it back together. Not like relationships, not like sons who decide you're too embarrassing for their new family. Around noon, Tim brought me a sandwich from the deli next door. Your phone's been blowing up, he said. Left it in the office. Want me to get it? No. He nodded and left. I finished the transmission around 3, took it for a test drive, shifted smooth as silk through all the gears. Perfect. When I got back, there was a BMW parked in front of the service bay. New. Probably cost more than I made in 2 years. I knew that car. I'd seen it parked at the Hartwell estate during the wedding reception. I parked the Mustang and got out. The BMW's door opened and a man stepped out. Late 50s, gray hair, expensive suit, Melissa's father, Richard Hartwell. Mr. Donovan, he said. Mr. Hartwell. We'd met maybe 3 times. Wedding, rehearsal dinner. Once at Danny and Melissa's house. He'd looked through me every time like I was a window. I need to speak with you, he said. I'm working. This won't take long. I wiped my hands on a rag, didn't move from beside the Mustang, let him come to me if he wanted to talk. He walked over, stopped about 6 feet away like he was worried about getting grease on his suit. I understand there's been a misunderstanding, he said, about Christmas. No misunderstanding. I got the message loud and clear. I think perhaps Melissa and Stephen were a bit hasty. Stephen? My son-in-law. That's what we call him. Of course they did. Danny wasn't good enough for them either. They'd had to rename him, too. What do you want? I asked. I want to extend an invitation to you and your wife for Christmas dinner at our home. Melissa spoke out of turn, and we'd like to remedy that. Why? The question seemed to throw him. I'm sorry? Why the sudden change of heart? 25 phone calls in the middle of the night, you driving all the way across town to find me at work. What happened? His face tightened. Nothing happened. We simply realized we'd made a mistake. You're lying. Mr. Donovan, my son uninvited me because your daughter thinks I'm beneath you, because I work with my hands, because I'm not formal enough for your fancy Christmas dinner, and I made peace with that. But now you're here, dressed like you're about to argue a case in court, telling me it was all a mistake. I took a step toward him. So I'll ask again. What happened? He held my gaze for a moment, then looked away. There's been a situation with the dinner. Some of our guests have canceled. We need to fill seats. There it was. They didn't want me there. They needed bodies at the table. How many canceled? I asked. That's not... How many? 7 couples. 14 people. Nearly half their guest list, probably. And you thought you'd call me because you're desperate. Mr. Donovan, please. Stephen is very upset. He's been trying to reach you all morning. He wants his father there. Then he can come here himself and ask me. He's at the house. He's not handling this well. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered Melissa laughing with her friend. Remembered the lie about borrowed money. Remembered coveralls. I'm not coming to your dinner, I said. You can tell your daughter she got what she wanted. I'm not embarrassing you anymore. Mr. Donovan, please be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm being more reasonable than you deserve. I turned back to the Mustang. He called after me, but I ignored him. When I came out, he was gone. Tim was standing in the doorway of his office. That was Melissa Donovan's father, he said. I know. He looked pissed. Good. I cleaned up my tools, washed my hands, clocked out, drove home in the early winter dark. Linda's car was in the driveway. So was another car, a silver Audi, Danny's car. I sat in the truck for a long moment. Through the kitchen window, I could see them inside, Linda and Danny, talking. She had her hand on his arm. He looked wrecked, eyes red, hadn't shaved, still wearing what looked like yesterday's clothes. I got out and went inside. They both turned when I walked in. Danny started to speak, but I held up my hand. Before you say anything, I said, I know why you're here. Your father-in-law already tried. Answer's no. Dad, please. No. Just let me explain. Explain what? That you uninvited me to Christmas because I embarrass your wife? That she told her parents I borrowed money I never paid back? That you've been calling me Stephen? He flinched. You heard about that. I heard about a lot of things. Linda looked between us. Jack, let him talk. Why? So he can apologize? So he can tell me it was all Melissa's idea and he's sorry? I don't care anymore, Danny. It's Daniel. The words came out automatic, defensive. Then he heard himself and closed his eyes. No, I said quietly. It's not. Your mother named you Danny, after her father, and you don't get to erase that just because your wife thinks it's not sophisticated enough. That's not why. Get out. Dad, get out of my house. Linda made a sound. Jack, don't. Did you know she lied about me? I asked Danny. To her parents, about the money. He didn't answer. Didn't have to. I saw it in his face. You did know, and you let her. It was just easier. Get out. He stood there for another moment. Then he turned and walked out. A minute later, I heard his car start. Watched the headlights sweep across the kitchen window as he backed down the driveway. Linda was crying. He came to apologize, she said. He came to make it right. He came because something went wrong with their fancy dinner and they need to fill seats. That's not an apology. That's desperation. Jack, I'm going to the garage. Jack, don't do this. Don't shut everyone out. But I was already moving. Out the back door, across the yard, into the garage. I turned on the lights and the space heater and stood there in the cold, mechanical smell of oil and metal. The Triumph sat where I'd left it. Beautiful, perfect, honest. I'd spent 6 months building it, 6 months of careful work, every part considered, every decision deliberate. My son had spent 26 years being my son, and he'd thrown it away for a woman who mocked me to her friends. I sat down on my work stool, started thinking, not about forgiveness, not about reconciliation, about something else entirely, about what I'd heard Melissa say, about borrowed money that never existed, about lies told to justify cutting someone out of the family, about how easy it had been for them to decide I wasn't worth having around. I pulled out my phone, turned it on for the first time since morning. The voicemails and texts flooded in like a dam breaking. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I opened Facebook, started scrolling through Melissa's page. It was set to public. Pictures of their house, pictures of dinners, pictures of parties, pictures of her family. I stopped on one from 3 weeks ago. Melissa with her parents at some charity gala, her father in a tuxedo, her mother in a dress that probably cost more than my truck. All of them smiling. The caption read, "So proud of Dad for his work with the Riverside Foundation, making a difference." I clicked on the foundation's website, read about their mission, supporting local families in need, providing scholarships, building community. Then I dug deeper, found their financial filings, public record. Anyone could access them. Found something interesting in the tax documents from 2 years ago. A discrepancy. Nothing huge, but enough to make me curious. I kept digging. By midnight, I'd found 3 more discrepancies. Small amounts, moved between accounts. Technically legal, probably, but questionable. The kind of thing that would look really bad if someone asked questions about it. The kind of thing that could sink a charity's reputation. The kind of thing that could ruin a family that built its identity on philanthropy and community service. I sat back and stared at the screen. Linda came out around 1 in the morning. "Come to bed," she said. "In a minute." She looked at the laptop. "What are you doing?" "Research." "Jack, they want me at their dinner because people canceled. You know why people canceled?" She shook her head. "Neither do I, but I'm going to find out." She was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down on the other work stool. "What did you find?" So I showed her. The tax filings, the discrepancies, the questions it raised. "Are they stealing from their own charity?" she asked. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe it's nothing. But it's worth looking into." "Why?" I looked at her. "Because they tried to erase me. Because they lied about me. Because my son chose them over me. And this is revenge? This is making sure they know who they're dealing with." She studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. "What do you need me to do?" The county prosecutor's office was downtown in a building that looked like it had been built in the 70s and hadn't been updated since. Gray concrete, small windows, the kind of place that made you feel guilty just walking into it. Detective Chen met me in the lobby. She was younger than I expected, early 30s maybe, sharp eyes, firm handshake. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Donovan. Just want to help however I can." She led me to a small interview room. Table, 2 chairs, recording equipment on the wall. "This is being recorded?" I asked. "Standard procedure. Just want to make sure we have everything documented correctly. You're not under investigation, Mr. Donovan. This is purely informational." I sat down. She sat across from me. "Tell me how you first became aware of irregularities in Richard Hartwell's charity finances." So I told her. About Danny uninviting me to Christmas. About driving past their house and overhearing Melissa. About the anger that led me to start digging into public records. "And you found discrepancies in the tax filings?" "Yes. Small at first. But they added up. Money being moved between accounts in ways that didn't make sense. timing that suggested someone was trying to make their finances look better than they were. What made you think these weren't legitimate financial transactions? The pattern. It was too consistent, too calculated, and it all lined up with the time frame when the Hartwells were supposedly planning this big business partnership. How did you know about the business partnership? I overheard it, and a friend mentioned it, Eleanor Bronson. Detective Chen wrote something down. Yes. Mrs. Bronson has been very helpful in this investigation. She provided additional documentation that corroborated your findings. She's been after Richard Hartwell for a while. So have we. But we couldn't move without solid evidence. What you found gave us the foundation we needed to dig deeper. So it was real? What I found? Very real. Mr. Hartwell has been systematically embezzling from the Riverside Foundation for approximately 4 years. We estimate the total at around $2 million. I sat back. $2 million. Jesus. And my son, Danny, is he implicated in any of this? Stephen Donovan works for Mr. Hartwell's company. We're looking into his role, but at this point we don't believe he had knowledge of the embezzlement. His name doesn't appear on any of the relevant accounts or transactions. Relief flooded through me. So he's clear? Pending the outcome of our investigation, yes, though he may be called to testify about his father-in-law's business practices. He'll cooperate. I'll make sure of it. We talked for another hour. She asked detailed questions about where I'd found the information, how I'd connected the dots, whether anyone had helped me. I answered everything as honestly as I could. Finally, she shut off the recorder. Off the record, Mr. Donovan, what you did took guts. Most people would have just let it go. I couldn't let it go. Because of your son? Because of what they did to him, what they turned him into? She nodded. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. People like Richard Hartwell, they rely on everyone else being too afraid or too polite to call them out. They get away with it because we let them. Not this time. No, not this time. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Danny was in the clear. The investigation was moving forward. The Hartwells were going down. It wasn't over, but it was close. Linda and Danny were in the kitchen when I got home. How'd it go? Linda asked. Good. They just wanted to verify information, make sure everything was legitimate. And Danny? He's clear. They don't think he knew anything about the embezzlement. Danny sagged in his chair. Thank God. They might call you to testify, though. I'll do it, whatever they need. Over the next week, things started to settle into a new normal. Danny stayed in his old room, started looking for a new job, filed for divorce from Melissa. The investigation continued. More charges were filed against Richard Hartwell. Claire Hartwell was implicated too, though less severely. The foundation was dissolved. The estate went up for sale. The house of cards wasn't just collapsing, it was obliterated. And through it all, my phone kept ringing. Reporters wanting interviews, lawyers wanting statements, people from town wanting to know if the rumors were true. I didn't answer most of them, but one call I did answer, from Tim Patterson at the garage. Jack, I've got something weird happening here. What kind of weird? People calling, asking about you, not reporters, customers, saying they heard you were the guy who took down Richard Hartwell, saying they want to bring their cars to you. Why would they want that? Because you're a legend now, apparently. The mechanic who stood up to the rich asshole. It's good publicity. I've booked out your schedule for the next 3 months. I laughed. Couldn't help it. That's insane. That's business. You're famous, Jack. Might as well profit from it. After I hung up, Linda looked at me. What was that about? I told her. She started laughing, too. You realize what this means? She said. What? You won, not just against the Hartwells. Against everyone who ever looked down on you. Against everyone who ever thought working with your hands made you less than. I didn't do it to win. I know. That's why it matters. That evening, we got an unexpected visitor, Eleanor Bronson. She knocked on the door around 7. I almost didn't answer, but Linda said we should. Eleanor stood on our porch holding a bottle of wine. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all. Come in. She came in, and we sat in the living room. Danny was out, looking at apartments. Linda offered coffee, but Eleanor declined. I wanted to thank you, she said. Both of you, for having the courage to do what I couldn't. You had evidence too, I said. But I didn't have your motivation. I was angry, vindictive. But you were protecting your son. That's different. That's stronger. I was angry too. Of course you were. But that anger came from love. That's what made it righteous. Summer came and went in a blur of work and rebuilding. Danny got his teaching job at the community college. Turned out he was good at it. Patient with students, able to explain things in ways that made sense. He'd learned that from me, he said, though I wasn't sure I agreed. We started building a bike together in the evenings. A restoration project. 1969. Norton Commando. Frame was rusted to hell when we started, but we took it apart piece by piece, rebuilt it piece by piece, like we were rebuilding our relationship, piece by piece. Linda went back to work too. She'd been a nurse before we got married, but had taken time off to help raise Danny after his mom died. Now she was working part-time at the hospital, said she needed to do something that mattered. You matter, I told her. I know. But I need to matter to more than just you and Danny. Fair enough. Life settled into something resembling normal. I worked at the garage. Danny taught his classes. We had dinner together most nights, watched TV, argued about politics and sports and whether the Norton should have chrome or black pipes. Normal family stuff. But there were still moments. Still times when I'd catch Danny staring off into space, thinking about what he'd lost, about the life he could have had if he'd made different choices. You okay? I'd ask. Yeah, he'd say. Just thinking. About Melissa? Sometimes. Mostly about how close I came to losing everything that actually mattered. But you didn't. Because you wouldn't let me. In August, we got a letter from Melissa, forwarded to Danny from his old address. He opened it at the kitchen table. Linda and I watched him read it. His face didn't change. What does it say? Linda asked. She's moving to California, starting over. Wants me to know she doesn't blame me for what happened. That's big of her, I said, and I didn't entirely keep the sarcasm out of my voice. Is it, though? She didn't do anything wrong, not legally. She just married into a family of criminals and was too blind to see it. Same as you, Linda said gently. No, I chose not to see it. That's different. You still want to respond? I asked. He thought about it. Then he folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. No, that chapter's closed. No point digging it back up. September brought the start of a new semester. Danny's classes were full. Apparently, word had gotten out that he was a good teacher. Or maybe students just wanted to be taught by the guy from the news. Either way, he was making a difference. One evening in late September, we were finishing the Norton. Final assembly, engine in, wiring done. Just needed to test it. Danny stood back and looked at it. It's beautiful. It is. You think it'll run? Only one way to find out. I turned the key, hit the starter. The engine coughed, died. I tried again. This time it caught, rumbled to life, smooth and powerful, perfect. Danny was grinning, huge smile, the kind I hadn't seen on his face in years. We did it, he said. Yeah, we did. We stood there, listening to that engine, to the sound of something broken that we'd made whole again. Dad? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For not giving up. On me, on us, on everything. You're my son. That's not something I get to give up on. A lot of fathers would have. Then they're not real fathers. He came over and hugged me. Tight. The kind of hug you give someone when you almost lost them and you're just grateful they're still here. We stayed like that for a while. father and son, standing in a garage full of tools and oil and the smell of gasoline. Home. October brought the first frost, and with it, an invitation to Christmas dinner at Eleanor Bronson's house. "We don't have to go," Linda said when the invitation arrived. "Why wouldn't we?" "Because it'll remind you of everything that happened last year, because it might be too much. Or maybe it'll show me how far we've come." We accepted the invitation, all three of us, me and Linda and Danny. The dinner was on Christmas Eve, same as last year. But everything else was different. We drove to Eleanor's house together, Danny in the back seat, making jokes about how he'd never thought he'd be going to Millbrook Heights for Christmas again. "Different circumstances this time," I said. "Yeah, this time I'm not ashamed of you." "You weren't ashamed of me then either. You were ashamed of yourself." "Maybe." Eleanor's house was warm and bright, full of people. Some I recognized from last year, some new faces, all of them welcoming. Eleanor greeted us at the door. "Jack, Linda, Stephen." She caught herself. "Danny, I'm sorry. Danny." "It's okay," he said. "I've been called worse." We went inside. The house was decorated beautifully. Christmas tree in the corner, lights everywhere, music playing softly. It felt like Christmas, real Christmas, not the cold, formal thing the Hartwells had been planning, just warmth and food and people who genuinely wanted to be there. I found myself relaxing, talking to people, telling stories about the garage, about building bikes, about the Norton project Danny and I had finished. People listened, actually listened, like what I did mattered. "You're different than you were last year," Eleanor said at one point. "How so?" "More confident, more comfortable in your own skin." "Last year I was trying to prove I belonged. This year I know I do." "Good. You should know that." Around 9, someone tapped a glass, asked for everyone's attention. Eleanor stood up. "I just want to say a few words before we eat. First, thank you all for coming. It means the world to me to be surrounded by friends and family during this season." Applause. "Second, I want to recognize someone special. Jack Donovan. Jack, would you stand up?" I stood reluctantly. Everyone was looking at me. Jack came to my dinner last year as a guest. This year he's here as a friend. And more than that, he's here as someone who stood up for what was right when it cost him almost everything. He's a reminder that integrity isn't about status or wealth or connections. It's about doing the right thing even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. More applause. Louder this time. I sat down feeling embarrassed. Danny was smiling at me. Linda squeezed my hand. "She's right," Linda whispered. "She's being dramatic. Maybe, but that doesn't make it less true." We ate dinner. Ham and turkey and all the traditional sides, dessert, coffee. It was perfect. Everything the Hartwell dinner was supposed to be but never could have been because it was built on lies. As we were leaving, Eleanor pulled me aside. "I want you to know something." "What?" Richard Hartwell appealed his sentence. It was denied yesterday. He's going to serve the full 12 years. I hadn't heard. "I thought you should know. Thought you'd want closure. Thank you." "Do you feel any different, knowing he's really going to prison for a long time?" I thought about it, about all the anger and hurt and rage that had driven me to dig into his finances in the first place. "No," I said honestly. "I stopped caring about Richard Hartwell months ago. This isn't about him anymore." "Then what's it about?" "My son, my family, building something real." She smiled. "That's exactly what it should be about." We drove home in comfortable silence. Christmas lights flickering in windows, decorations on lawns, the whole world celebrating. When we got home, Danny went straight to bed. Linda and I sat in the living room for a while, looking at our own tree, small and a little crooked but ours. "Best Christmas?" Linda asked. "Best Christmas. Better than last year?" "Last year wasn't Christmas. This is Christmas." She leaned against me. "I'm proud of you." You know that, right? For what? For being exactly who you are. No apologies, no pretending, just you. That's all I know how to be. That's all you need to be. We sat there until we fell asleep on the couch, woke up around 3 in the morning and stumbled to bed. In the morning, we opened presents. Nothing expensive, nothing fancy, just thoughtful things we'd gotten each other. Danny gave me a new set of mechanics gloves, top of the line, better than anything I would have bought myself. You're always complaining about your old ones, he said. They work fine. They have holes in them. Character. Dad. Thank you. They're perfect. I gave him a leather jacket, the kind you wear on a motorcycle, with patches and zippers and that worn-in look that can't be faked. For the Norton, I said, when we finally take it out. It's amazing. Now you look like a real rider. I am a real rider. You taught me. We spent the day together, cooked, watched movies, played cards, all the things families do when they're not trying to impress anyone. Just being. That evening, Danny and I went out to the garage, fired up the Norton, let it warm up. Want to take it for a spin? I asked. Are you kidding? I've been waiting all day. We both got on. Danny drove. I rode behind him. Out into the cold December evening. We rode for an hour, through town, out into the country, along roads that stretched out under stars and moon and the endless dark sky, and for the first time in a year, everything felt right. When we got back, Linda was waiting on the porch. How was it? She asked. Perfect, Danny said. Better than perfect, I corrected. It was real. We went inside, made hot chocolate, sat around the kitchen table talking about nothing and everything. This was what I'd been fighting for all along. This moment, this feeling. Family, not the kind that looks good on paper, not the kind that impresses wealthy in-laws, just the real thing. Messy and imperfect and absolutely worth everything it took to get here. Dad, Danny said as we were cleaning up. Yeah? I never asked. Do you forgive me? For everything. I looked at him. At this man who'd been my little boy once, who'd lost his way and found it again, who'd hurt me and come back anyway. There's nothing to forgive. You're here. That's enough. It shouldn't be enough. But it is, because that's what family means. You screw up, you fix it, you move forward. That's all any of us can do. He nodded, didn't say anything, didn't need to. We finished cleaning up in comfortable silence. Then we all went to bed. In the morning, life would go back to normal. Work and teaching and building things in the garage, the rhythm of ordinary days. But tonight, lying in bed with Linda beside me and my son safe under our roof, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace.